It's almost like the poker gods have seen the YouTube comments that have been like, you can't make $100 an hour. And they're like, you know what? I'm gonna reward Marc Goone. Because tonight, in one session, I got pocket aces and got in all the money, not once, not twice, but 3 times.
Let's rewind a second. That's me, Marc Goone, and I've taken a journey back to the streets of low-stakes live poker to try to prove the ceiling is much, much higher than conventional wisdom. In fact, I'm trying to win $100 an hour. In this episode, I played 2 sessions at Hustler Casino, and the poker gods may just reward me once or twice or thrice, thrice, is that a word? With the second best hand in poker, pocket aces. Can I stay on track to do what no one thinks is possible? Let's find out.
Down bad, bounce back, boy, I'm different. Watch how I handle my business. Watch with the hands not ticking. Listen, that's that drum kick, boom, coming out of my system.
All right, jumping into the first session of the week at Hustler. In the very first hand, double board PLO bomb pot. So we've got Jack 9 8 4. And the first board is going to come 10-6-6, so we've got a gut shot. And second board, pretty good for us, 9-8-8. So we flop the nuts on the second board. It's going to check all the way around to us in the cutoff here. And with the nuts on one board, we either want to deny equity and shut everybody out and just take the pot down, or we want multiple players to call. I go 100 into 150. The button calls, the EP player calls, and the hijack calls. So we're 4 ways going to a turn, which is a queen of hearts up top and a 5 of spades down below. So we still have the nuts on the second board, and now we are open-ended on the top board. But we did not expect that to be good even if we hit our straight, because the top board is already paired. It is going to check all the way around to us. Pot is 550, and once again, we want multiple callers in here. Right? We either want to take this pot down or we want multiple callers in. And I don't think players in this game are generally folding a hand like ace-6. So we're going to try to get multiple players in. So we bet 250 here into 550. Now the button is going to call and EP is going to call as well. So plan is going perfectly so far. 3 ways to the river, which is a deuce of clubs up top. So we've got nothing on the top board and a 9 down below. Now EP donks all in for 570. If we just jam, we're going to shut the button out behind us, and it is very, very likely, right, that the button and the EP player are playing the same board. So we would love for the button to come in here. So we are just going to call here, trying to get the button to come along, but the button does fold, and we are going to chop it up with the EP player who has ace 7 6 deuce. So he rivered a full house on the top board. All right, next hand here, another double board PLO bomb pot. This time we're 7-handed, so 175 out there, and we've got queen jack jack 6. And board 1 comes queen jack deuce, so pretty good for us. Board 2 comes ace 8 4 with a couple of hearts, and early position player is going to bet 125. We are going to call in the hijack here. Don't really see a reason to raise right now. When an early position player comes out and just bets into 6 other people here, he is most likely playing the other board, right? He most likely has like a set of aces or a set of 8s or like ace-x of hearts or something like that. We have 0 fold equity. So if possible, we would like for other people to come along who we can chop up their money. Now the big blind is going to call. So 3 ways to a turn, which is a queen up top. So now we have the nuts on the top board and a 3 of clubs down below. Big blind is going to check. Under the gun moves all in, and I anticipate here nearly 100% of the time that the big blind is playing the second board. So if we can somehow get the big blind to fold here, it would be pretty good for us. Now if under the gun was deeper, we'd want the big blind to come along so we could just chop up one of these players' money, but if possible, we would like to max fold equity here and get the big blind out of there. So we're just going to jam. The big blind does call though. River is a king up top and a 9 down below, and under the gun has ace deuce of hearts with pocket 8s. So under the gun actually had the nut flush draw and second set on the other board, and big blind has pocket aces, and we're going to chop up the under the gun player's money here. Next hand, let's play some Hold'em. Finally, the straddle is on, so we're playing 5-5-10. We open up ace 3 of diamonds on the button, and the big blind and straddle are going to call here. Flop comes 10-7-5 with 3 spades, and it checks over to us, and I decide just to take a small stab here, planning to give up if the big blind calls, and if the straddle calls, well, then we've got some options. If the big blind calls, he's going to be next to act. He's going to have a stronger range. We are going to bet 45. The big blind folds and the straddle calls. We are heads up going to a turn, which is the jack of clubs. We would love to entice him to raise off now if he does have an ace high flush. We would also love to incentivize him to call one more time here if he does have a hand like 10x. And I think a lot of those hands will fold if we go too big here. We would love for those hands to call now, and then we can get them to fold on the river. So we go 80, very small here, and he is going to call again. Now the river is a 6 of clubs, and once again on this river, we are just targeting the 10x now. If I was trying to get a hand like King 10 or Ace 10 or Queen 10 to call, what size would I bet? Well, I think I would have to go very small here. I think I would have to go something like 150 to 180 because there is an overcard to a 10, and we bet multi-way on the flop. There is a flush out there. I just don't think a 10 is hanging on for that much money. So I'm gonna go a little bit bigger than that, trying to get a 10 to fold. So I go 260 here. Once again, he could have some stronger hands here, like 2 pair, possibly some straights here. So those hands are never folding. So I want to be efficient with my bluff sizing here, but he is going to call. I proudly flip over my hand and tell him I flopped it, and he shows King 10. So the exact hand we were targeting to fold here, he calls with, and just a little bit of a calibration error on my part, not quite realizing how sticky this player is. Probably just need to size up on this river, maybe go 350, 400, something like that to get the 10x to fold all the time. All right, next hand here. A few players are walking. I don't really know what's going on, but for some reason we are 3-handed here, and the button is going to open to 20. We've got 10-7 of clubs in the small blind, and normally this would just be a muck for me, but I actually noticed this player was opening very, very wide on the button, opening hands like King 6 offsuit. I'm gonna 3-bet a wider range here, just knowing this guy is opening pretty wide on the button, and try to punish him. So I go $80 here, and the button is going to call. We're heads up to a flop, which comes Jack 10-7, and we have bottom 2 pair. I'm just checking my entire range out of position, even in 3-bet pots, especially on boards like this. Wet dynamic boards, I feel like are just going to be overstabbed. And the button actually goes really big here for a 3-bet pot. He goes $100, and I'm kind of torn between raising here or just calling and letting him kind of barrel off. And I elect to just call because I think he has a strong hand, and if we start piling in a lot of money, I think we're essentially just getting value owned here some portion of the time. I think he may just sometimes fold hands here like Queen Jack or King Jack if we start piling in money right now. So I'm just going to call. Turn is now a deuce of diamonds, bringing in the front door flush. We check it over, and he bets 220 here on this turn. Not loving it, but we've still got 2 pair. So we are going to call one more time, play some Fifth Street Chicken. River is a jack of clubs, so we hate this river. Now we're just not beating that many hands, except hands like King Queen or Queen 9 suited or something like that. But we check it over, he checks it back, we show, and we are good. So pretty obvious this guy just had a straight draw like King Queen, Queen 9 suited, something like that, and gave up on the river. Next hand, I think this is a pretty good bluff, and I'm happy with the thought process behind it. It may or may not have worked out. We open to 25 from early position with pocket 6s. Hijack calls, and now the cutoff is going to squeeze to 125. These guys are just not squeezing wide enough for value here. And I think this is just top of range, but this player a little bit more aggressive maybe than the player pool in general. I think he can be doing this with hands like Ace Queen and Ace King for sure here. So we are going to call. These guys mostly also just play face up post flop, especially in 3-bet pots after they c-bet. So we are going to call. Hijack folds, gets out of the way, heads up to a flop, which comes 10-9-8. We check it over, and he checks it back. Now the turn is a Queen of Hearts. We check, and he checks again. River now is an ace, and at this point, I think his most likely holding with the way this hand played out is a hand like Ace King. Now there is a one-liner to a jack out there. If we check, we just expect him to check back. He's not going to value bet this river, but I'm just going to try to get the Ace King to fold here on this river. Pot is 280. I go 600, so I go over 2x pot here, just praying that the ace king is going to have to fold here. We look very strong. It's hard for us to be bluffing. We're not giving him a good price, and he is going to tank and tank and tank. And he is finally going to put in a call, and he shows pocket queens. So he actually checked back on the flop. Pretty good check back actually on this flop with pocket queens. Turned top set and tank calls. He looked very pained on this river. I think he actually played this hand pretty well, checking back on this flop, and going to give him credit here. You know, I can be critical of myself even when things work, and I think my thought process is wrong. This one did not work, but I think the thought process is solid. Next hand, we open to 25 from early position with 8-7 of spades. The low jack, small blind, and big blind are going to call. 4 ways to a flop, king 8-6. And we are going to check here, and this is going to check through. Turn is a king, pairing the board. Pretty good card for us. The small blind leads for $25, folds over to us. I think it's very likely that he has an 8, a 6, pocket sevens, something like that. So our hand here, good enough to call, but just noting, like, if my hand was slightly better here, I'd be raising for value. I'd be raising for value on this turn. We call, the low jack gets out of the way, heads up to a river, which is the ace of clubs. Now the small blind checks, and at this point, I think we're free rolling. And I think there's 2 options here on this river. We go very small for value, targeting a hand like 6x, pocket sevens, pocket fives here. Or I actually think it's probably best here just to go big and get his entire range to fold, because we're going to be chopping with any 8x. Now I'm talking myself out of it because we could just run into ace x of hearts sometimes. So whatever, I go 25, he calls, and we're going to chop against 8-7 of diamonds, same hand. Double board PLO.
Hello.
Guys, these double board PLO bomb pots are so good. They are just so good. So this one, we've got king deuce 8-3 with a couple of spades and a couple of diamonds. We're 8-handed, $200 out there. Flop 1 comes 10-8-5 rainbow. Flop 2 comes jack 9-7 with a couple of spades. So not really a ton going on for us here. We've got a king high spade draw. It is going to check all the way through. Now the turn is going to be in 8 of spades up top. So we now have trips with a king high kicker on the top board. Bottom board is going to be a 3 of clubs. So we have a king high flush draw down below, and we've got trips with a king high flush draw up top. So not all that bad. And when it checks all the way around to us, we're gonna pot it here, try to get people to fold out their equity. Only the low jack is going to call. So it's gonna fold all the way around, and the low jack is going to call. River is now a 5 of spades up top. So we actually make a king high backdoor flush up top and a 3 of hearts down below. So we make trips on the bottom board. He checks it over. I'm just going to apply a big bet here and expect this guy not to fold. And I think we're scooping a good percentage of the time. I go 600. He calls, and he has pocket kings with 8-4. So he has an 8 on the board where we have a 8 also and a flush. And he just has pocket kings on the other board where we have trip 3s. So we are going to scoop here. The whole table's trying to figure out it's a chop, and I'm just motioning, hey, excuse me, please push the pot this way, sir. I would like this pot. Double board PLO bomb pots, so good, so good. All right, we're here with Jeremy, J Boogs. Hello.
What up?
Hello.
What up?
Hello.
What up?
All right, Jeremy, I gotta ask you, I am playing 5-5. I'm attempting to win $100 an hour at low stakes. Do you think it is possible?
Of course.
That easy?
You. Yeah.
When was the last time you played a game as small as 5-5?
I'm actually playing 5-5-10 right now, warming up for the Hustler Casino All-Star Game today. 100-200 with Alan Keating, Ludacris, a bunch of fun players. Should be good. I hope I win more than $100 an hour in that game.
I wish you the best of luck. Hope you crush it today. Hope you win $162,000.
Me too. Thanks, dude.
Thanks, Jeremy.
This hand is a doozy. Let me tell you, we are walking on the edge of that exploit cliff, balancing on a tightrope, trying not to go tumbling down the mountain. So Let's see if we can pull it off. We open on the button to $25 without looking at my cards because that's what I do when there are weaker players in the blinds. The small blind is going to call here, recreational player. And now the big blind, who is a for-profit player, is going to squeeze to 100. Now, a couple notes on this player. He has been playing, as Charlie Wilmoth describes, kind of a pre-flop chart in trenchcoat style. So he has been 3-betting quite actively, but he's playing very face-up post-flop. He is up like $1,500 or so dollars. So we start this hand very, very deep, and folding is not an option. Even though my hand is garbage, we are 400 plus, 450 big blinds deep here. This guy's going to play face up post flop. I don't think he wants to play for it all. So I think calling is option number one, and we're just going to have a massive edge, 400 big blinds deep. But if we call, I think sometimes the small blind comes along as well, or almost always the small blind comes along as well. The problem with that is, even though we're going to be in position here, absolute position on the button, we're going to have the shittiest relative position, meaning the small blind is always going to naturally check to the big blind, and when the big blind c-bets, we are going to be next to act and have to worry about an uncapped range from the small blind behind us. So with that extra consideration here, I'm actually going to decide to 4-bet. 9-8 offsuit here. I go 250. Small blind gets out of the way. Big blind calls. We are heads up to a flop. Flop comes king 7-4 with a couple of diamonds. He checks it over, and I want to choose a size here that pocket jacks or pocket queens are going to continue with here. I would like those hands to continue because I do think I can get those hands to fold 100% of the time by the river, as long as they don't hit a set or a backdoor flush. So I go 100 here, targeting the weaker portions of his range to come along. He is going to call. Turn is now a 6 of diamonds. He checks it over. Pot is 720. I do think his range is mostly going to be queens, jacks, ace, king, maybe pocket kings, and I think we can get the queens and jacks to fold a lot by the river. So I bet 250 here, just targeting pocket queens or pocket jacks with a diamond. Now he's going to check raise to 600. It doesn't work in this hand. I admit it, it doesn't work. And I tell him,
I was gonna put it all in for you. Hey, thank you.
and he actually shows ace king of diamonds here. Of course, he has the nuts. They always have the nuts. So they just let you off the hook when they have the very strong hands, which is really, really good, because when they don't raise, that just means they don't have the nuts, and you can just blast them off of whatever they have with impunity. Double board, PLO, bomb pot. We've got a litany of them today. Litany, I like that word. This one, we've got king 9 8 5. Board 1 is going to come ace 6 deuce, and board 2 is going to come pretty good for us, king 9 9. So we flop the second nuts. I guess somebody could have pocket kings and beat us on the second board. So it checks to us in the hijack here, and I would like for a bunch of people to call, and maybe we can chop up all the people who are playing the top board's money. So I don't think we're gonna get folds here when it's this multi-way. So I'm just gonna choose a smaller size, try to get a bunch of players in there when we've got the bottom board on lockdown. We go 100, the small blind is going to call, and the low jack is going to call as well. Turn is a 6 up top and a 5 down below. So nothing really changes here. We still have basically the nuts, the second nuts here on the second board. Checks over to us. And again, we would like both players to call. So we go 200 here. The small blind calls, and now the low jack painfully folds here. He gets out of the way. He looks like he wanted to call, but he folds. River is a 6 on the top board and a jack down below. We would love for this player to fold if he does just have a hand like ace X. I think that hand is going to be hard pressed to hang on. Even any pocket pair is going to beat ace X on the top board. If he doesn't have a full house, if he doesn't have a 6, I think he's going to have a very hard time hanging on. So I just put him all in. He's got just under 700. I go 700 here, and he is going to fold, and we get this one through, and we end up taking down the entire pot. Next hand, the straddle is on. We open to 45 from early position with ace 4 of spades. The low jack is going to call. The straddle comes along as well. Flop comes ace queen 6. Checks over to us. Just going to be doing a lot of checking here. Don't think this hand benefits from betting. It checks through. Turn is a 10 of diamonds. Checks over to us. And now it's time to start putting in money, getting value here. There can just be a lot of pair plus flush draws, pair plus straight draws out there. So I go $60. The low jack is going to fold, and the straddle calls, heads up to a river, which comes a 4. We make two pair now. He checks it over, and I think there's two options on this river. He's got about 375 behind, pot is 260. Option one is to go small and target a hand like ace 9 that checked again on the turn. Just a single pair, weak ace X that would fold if we put all the money in, most likely. The other option here is to target some two pair hands or stronger ace X. Now, if he did have a hand like ace jack, I think that may just come out and bet the turn at some frequency, or a hand like ace 6 for two pair. I'm just going to go for gold against the two pair portion of his range, and maybe hands like ace jack that just aren't going to be able to fold on this river when he checks twice and doesn't put us on a very strong hand. So we are going to go all in for about 375 here into 260. He is going to call, and we are good with ace 4.
All right, guys, session recap. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know how I'm gonna tell my wife this, but played 6 hours and lost $662. Not the best session.
All right, moving into the second session of the week here at Hustler. Look at this nice purple table. The game's been going overnight. I believe it was a 2-5 game that converted to 5-5. So they have it on the outer tables here outside the crystal room at Hustler. I know the names of the rooms. Pretty good, huh? We open to 25 in the hijack with ace 10 offsuit. The button, a big blind call. 3 ways to a flop. Queen 6-3. Nothing going on. It checks through. Turn is a king of clubs here. Once again, the turn is going to check through. River is the jack of spades. Look at that sweet baby there. It checks over to us. If I was bluffing on this river, I would just go very big, just figuring that nobody has two pair. Nobody has king X. And I think we could just go 100, 125 here and get everybody to fold always. So I go small. I go $50 targeting a jack. The button is going to call, and we show, and obviously we are good. All right, they have moved us back inside the comfy, cozy environment of the crystal room. Double board PLO bomb pot. I don't know about you guys, but I look forward to these now every orbit. It's my favorite part, the double board PLO bomb pot. So we are in the cutoff with king, queen, 9, 7, 8-handed, 200 bucks in there. Flop 1 comes queen, 8, 4, so we got top pair. Flop 2 comes king, 10, 5, so we got, well, top pair. Checks all the way over to us in the cutoff, and I actually decide to bet here with top pair on each board. I do think like players in early position just generally come out and bet when they have very strong hands. If we get it heads up, we're going to have the best hand on one of the boards at a pretty decent frequency here. We're going to be in position. So we go 100 here. The low jack and hijack both call, and we're going to a turn, which is a 3 of clubs up top and a 4 of diamonds down below. We're 3 ways now, and we don't really have a particularly strong hand on either board. I don't love the situation I've put myself in here, so I'm just going to check this one back. Now the river is a 5 of spades up top and a 7 of spades down below, so we still just got top pair up top, and now we've got 2 pair down below, so we got king 7 down there. So it checks over to the hijack. He goes 300. I do think if the low jack had a strong hand on this river, he would just come out and bet himself. It's going to be very unlikely that we're losing on both boards here now at this point with the way the hand played out. The check on the flop from the hijack, the turn checking through, and now him going less than pot on this river. I do think we're going to have the best hand on at least one of these boards, as long as the low jack doesn't come along as well. So we call, low jack gets out of the way, and we're gonna chop it up against queen, jack, 6, 5. So he has 2 pair on the top board, and he had a pair and an open and straight draw on the bottom board, so we chop this one up. Next hand here, they always let you off the hook. Let me explain. Cutoff opens to $30. This is a big size. It's a 6x open size. Normally, I would just be proceeding very, very tight here and using large 3-bet sizes when a player opens to 6x. But this guy here has been opening to 30 with all of his hands, and he's also been opening wide, right? I've seen this guy just open with like 10-9 off from like the hijack. So we 3-bet to 90, just trying to isolate, play a pot heads up in position.
What do you have? Okay. I think mine's better. I think that's a bad deal for me.
Flop comes 9-4-4. He checks it over. Just see betting my entire range here. I go 60. He is going to call. Turn is now a 7 of diamonds, bringing in a backdoor diamond draw. Now he's going to donk here for half pot, 150 into 305. I think it's going to be a lot of hands that have turned a backdoor diamond draw here. Maybe like ace 10 of diamonds, ace queen of diamonds, something like that floated the flop. Now we could be behind a hand like 9x of diamonds some of the time. So I'm going to proceed cautiously here and expect him to play relatively face up on the river. River is a queen of diamonds, and now he goes 500, and you hear me saying,
It's too greedy.
once again, whenever they make a good hand, they just let you off the hook. Next hand, don't necessarily love how I played this one, so let's talk about it. Hijack goes 25, cutoff calls, button squeezes to 75. And it's already a warning sign when a player squeezes, because players don't squeeze enough. They don't 3-bet enough. But a couple things going on here. Number one, he's on the button, and even recreational players do 3-bet their button a lot more than any other position. Number two, he chose a very small squeeze size here. And so when we look down at pocket jacks here in the big blind, I think we have a relatively easy decision to continue as a cold 4-bet. If this was like early position versus early position and a player 3-bet, like I'd probably just fold jacks here some of the time. But I think because it's on the button, it's a small squeeze size, I think we're gonna have the best hand here a good percentage of the time. Folds back around to the button who calls. Flop comes king 7-7, and I'm not worried about my range here against a recreational player. I'm just going to play, what does my hand want to do? My hand wants to check here. We check and he checks it back. Now the turn is an 8 of hearts, bringing backdoor hearts to go along with front door spades. At this point, I think his range is going to be a lot of hands like pocket 9s, pocket 10s. I do think if he had ace king, he would just always bet here on this flop. So I think we're going to have the best hand a good percentage of the time here. Now we do lose to pocket queens, which makes some sense here. I just decide to jam all in. It is 380 effective. He snap calls. River is a 9, and now he shows king 6 of hearts. So this guy 3-bet squeezed king 6 of hearts on the button and called the 4-bet with king 6 of hearts. So just a note that this guy can be squeezing relatively wide, and when he chooses the smallest 3-bet size, he's just going to have a weaker range most likely, and we can get away with 4-betting this guy very, very light because he's going to continue wide in position. So not in love with how I played this hand, but making some notes just to go bigger for value and more linear against this particular player. The next hand here, just an example of why you can continue relatively wide when in position. We open on the button. Small blind, who is a very tight player, but playing for profit, is going to be playing face up a lot. Post goes 105 in the small blind. I think this guy is just not going to want to play for all the money at any frequency unless he has the goods. Now we look down at our hand. We've got a playable hand here, queen 8 of spades, so we are going to call here. Flop comes jack 9-3 with 3 clubs. Now the small blind goes 45 here, very small bet, 45 into 210. At this point, I just think he's c-betting because, you know, you're supposed to c-bet in a 3-bet pot. I don't think he has top of range here, and I think we can just apply a ton of pressure. I think he's 3-betting a decent amount, small blind versus button. Players know they're supposed to 3-bet, but then they just get a little bit lost post-flop when a flop comes out that they don't like, so they c-bet small. And so we're just going to raise right now and get all of his weak stuff to fold. But I do think if he does have a hand like pocket aces, pocket kings, pocket queens with a club or something like that, he'll just choose a bigger size here. So I'm just gonna go big here, and if he does call, we'll proceed with caution, probably give up on a lot of turns, but he is going to fold, and we take it down. Next hand here, big pot alert. So we raise to 25 from early position with the second best hand in poker, pocket aces. Low jack is going to call, and now much to our delight, the cutoff is going to squeeze to 150 here. And back around to us in early position. He starts his hand just over 1,000 effective. And now if you're playing against a pro here who understands this type of stuff, you probably want to keep the 4-bet size under 30% of the effective stack threshold, because once you go over that point, you're just priced in to call with any 2 if he jams. So in this spot, it would just be a click to 300, which I don't think is a good 4-bet size. So players at this level probably don't understand that when I put in 35% of the effective stack pre-flop that I'm just never folding, and then I only have aces or maybe kings, but it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter, right? I go 350 here. He is going to call. Flop comes ace 10-9. Pot is 730. So we flop top set here, and been experimenting quite a bit with just c-betting very, very small on these ace high boards in 4-bet pots, because if our opponent does have a hand like kings or queens, we want those hands to call. They're essentially drawing dead. And if our opponent has the last ace in his hand and has ace king, we're gonna get all the money anyway. So no reason to go big here. I go 10% pot. I go $75 here. He raises to 300. So at this point, we just think he probably has ace king or something like that, and he is not folding. He's only got about 360 behind. So we just put the money in here with him not having much behind. So he is going to call. Turn is a 4 of spades. River is a 5 of spades. We've got the ace of spades in our hand, so we think we're good all the time. We show our hand, and of course, we are good. Top set in a 4-bet pot continues to be a winning formula for us. Big pot alert again. Next hand here, the straddle is on. We look down at pocket aces again, and we make it $35 from the low jack. Now the button, the same villain from the last hand who we just stacked with pocket aces. 3 bets to 135. This could not be going any better. This is a dream scenario. The big blind is going to cold call, and back around to us. Now we're going to put in the 4-bet. I go 400 here. I actually think I could just go bigger, right? Because this guy's probably going to be semi-tilted here. I don't think he's folding anything. If he does have a strong hand, he's probably just going to put it in. But I go 400. I don't think that is horrible. The button starts this hand about 1,400 effective, so we're putting in just under 1/3 of his stack here, which seems fine. Now the button is going to call, big blind's going to fold, heads up to a flop, jack 8-5, and on this flop, I don't think hands, even like pocket 10s, pocket 9s are folding. Obviously, queens or kings are never folding, so I'm gonna choose a bigger size here on this flop, just trying to play a 2-street game. I go 300 here into 945, and if he calls, pot will be 1,500, and we'll have just about a half pot size bet behind on the turn, which we can jam. But he puts it in for us. He jams for 745 more, so just about 1,000 total here on this flop. We are going to call it off. The turn is a king of hearts. I don't love that. I don't love that at all. We now lose 2 pocket kings. The river is a 10 of hearts, and I'm not loving this run out, and we show our hand, and he has queen 8 of clubs. So we 3-bet huge and called a 4-bet with queen 8 of clubs, flopped middle pair and a flush draw, and we get a clean run out, and we rake in another monster pot in a 4-bet pot. Next hand, low jack opens to 20. We are on the button with king 3 of spades. Also, the small blind is on the button here, so we had to post $5 dead. A couple things going on here. Number 1, the low jack opened. This guy has a limping range. Number 2, we already have $5 in there, so it's only 15 to call. Number 3, we are on the button here, going to have position post flop. So I am going to call here. Small blind and big blind call, 4 ways to a flop. King 6 deuce with a couple of clubs. Checks over to the low jack, who goes $50. This is a big size into multiple people. Already feeling precarious, but I've got top pair here, and I'm expecting this guy to play face up on turn. So we call heads up to a turn, 9 of diamonds. Now he goes 135. Very, very easy fold here. He opened from early position. He bet big into multiple people on the flop, and he double barrels again on the turn after next to act calls. This is never a bluff in 9 million years, and the reason why you are able to call so wide pre-flop here on the button is because they give you so many clues. They turn their hand face up post-flop, and you were just able to get away when you flop a dominated top pair. Next hand here, cutoff goes 20. We 3-bet on the button with 7-5 of hearts. Isolate recreational players, play pots heads up in position. He is going to call. Flop comes ace king 10, and when he checks it over, just going to be c-betting my entire range small here. I go 45, he calls. Turn is an ace of clubs. He checks it over, and at this point, I want to choose a size to entice hands like king jack, jack 10, queen 10, king queen, to continue to call here, because if those king x hands fold right here, right now on the turn, we're not going to have anything to bluff profitably on the river. So I guess the 2 options here are either to go big on the turn and then give up on the river, or to go very small on the turn and then triple barrel small on the river, just knowing that we keep a bunch of king x and 10x in getting to the river, and we can bluff all those hands. So I decided to go with the latter option. I go 80, he calls. River is an ace, and we hate this river because we think he can just have 4 of a kind now, because ace x isn't going to raise on the turn when the board is so scary, when we can have ace king. And I don't think a king is now folding here on this river, so maybe the only river in the deck besides a king or a 10, which we would be giving up here. Normally I just always be triple barreling here, but we've got 7 high, but I don't think we have a triple barrel profitably here at any point anymore. So I'm just going to check. I give up, and he shows king jack offsuit for a full house. All right, a fun hand here. We open to 25 from early position. The low jack calls. Now we ask him what he has.
What do you have? I got queen jack of spades.
So we tell him what we got. Flop comes ace 6-5. We're going to check it over, and now I say,
Check, 'cause I got queen jack of spades.
turn is a 3 of diamonds. Once again, I'm going to check here. He checks it back. Now the river is a king of spades, and at this point we've got nut, no pair, so I do think we have a small smidge of showdown value, so not going to turn this one into a bluff. We check, he checks it back, and we actually win against queen 7 of hearts, so our queen jack high is good.
You don't watch my channel.
Huh? Not yet.
Not yet.
Because I didn't know where it was.
It's one of the best channels on the
About
internet.
an hour ago.
Second best channel on the internet.
Yeah? Yeah. Second best to CB.
Big pot alert. We look down at aces once again, and I say,
I don't have a very good hand, but I'm still gonna raise.
so I make it 25. The hijack calls. Now the button, a Brazilian pro, is going to squeeze to 150. This guy is a pro. I'm going to give him some credit here. I'm not going to have any ridiculous 4-bet sizes. We start off the hand just under 1,000 effective. So the only real 4-bet size here is to jam. Again, we're playing against competent players. We don't want to 4-bet to like 35 or 40% of their stack or something like that. Do that against recreational players. Don't do that against guys who have any clue what's going on. So I'm just going to put the money in here, and he is going to call, and I start saying,
What do you have?
Oh, yeah.
How much?
I need help.
A lot of help? I don't have a pair.
You don't have a pair? Ace, 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 ace.
flop is jack 10 4. Turn is a 4. I'm still screaming for an ace. Now the river is a 9. We show, and we are good. Aces in a 4-bet pot 3 times today, and we are 3 for 3 with pocket aces getting in all the money in 4-bet pots. Pretty good.
Back to the show.
I've been here all day and haven't got a good hand in a while, so.
All right, so here's a fun one. Lots of fun table talk. We open jack 9 of hearts here from the hijack to 25. The cutoff calls. Now the small blind asks.
How much?
25.
30 for you.
Small blind calls, big blind comes along as well. Flop comes jack 6-3 rainbow, checks over to us, and with one player in position, couple players out of position, not expecting this flop to get stabbed at a high frequency, with just one player in position to us, so I'm just gonna start betting off my good stuff right now. I bet 40, cutoff raises to 85. Think this is going to be a stop raise a lot of the time. Think he's just gonna have hands like ace jack, king jack, queen jack, but we're getting a really good price here. We've got a backdoor flush draw. We could be good some percentage of the time against hands like 10s or 9s. Actually, if we were really deep here, I may start considering turning this into a bluff, but he only starts his hand like 600, 500 effective or something like that. So I don't think this guy's gonna fold ace jack for that much. So I'm just going to call here, see what happens on the turn. Turn is a 4 of hearts. So now we pick up a backdoor flush draw. We check it over, he goes 110, getting a really good price here. Again, I just don't think I can get hands like ace jack or king jack to fold here when he doesn't have a lot of money behind. If we started this hand 1,000 effective, I would just start turning this hand into a bluff on the turn. But I'm going to call. River is now a deuce of hearts, and at this point, recreational players, number one, they don't bluff enough, right? This is never a bluff when he raises the flop and then bets the turn small. It's always just going to be a hand like ace jack or king jack. And number two, they don't bet thinly enough. So if I check here, he just doesn't have any bluffs. We're not giving him rope because he's not bluffing. Number two, if I check here, they're not going to value bet thinly enough. Would expect them to just check back hands like ace jack or king jack here 90+% of the time. I would not want to bluff in this spot because I wouldn't expect ace jack to fold. So I'm going to lead here for $300, just donking on this river, targeting ace jack. And now I start talking.
So you have ace 5 or something?
No, I flopped it.
You flop for what?
I flopped it.
Like set?
No, no
Two
set.
pair?
Nah, I flopped it. King jack, you have to.
Just hope this guy makes $100 an hour here and leaves.
Oh, wait.
He made that off you already.
Not yet. He's still here.
I have jack 9.
It's his go. Just watching his channel.
Bro, this guy too good.
I have jack 9.
Finally, he is going to call, and of course, we are good with our jack high flush. Next hand here, another one of these ace high boards in a single raise pot example. Let's see. We open to 25 from early position with ace king. Now the big blind is going to call. Flop comes ace 10-3. He checks it over. I'm just going to go big here, targeting his ace x and 10x only. I go 80 into 50. Now he check raises to 400. And this is never a bluff, guys. This is never, ever, ever a bluff. This is ace 10 or pocket threes all the time, right? So we've got ace king. I don't think he's doing this with worse for value. We bet huge on the flop. It's an ace high board. It's under check raised overbet on the flop. He check raised. So I'm just going to fold here. And he proudly flips over ace queen, just saying he was trying to protect his hand. So just massively overvaluing the ace queen. And we kind of get owned here, making a note that this guy just massively overvalues top pair, and to not fold top pair to this guy because he just could be doing it with worse for value. And obviously probably don't want to be bluffing this guy because he's just, what's going on? Who knows, guys? Low stakes. Sometimes it gets the best of you.
All right, guys, session wrap up. Pretty good session overall. Always happens when you get pocket aces 3 times and win stacks every time you get pocket aces. So played about 6 hours, won about $2,500 and some change. Marco will put the results over here for you guys nicely. And we're on pace and over the $20,000 earned mark so far. So far so good. We're on pace to do $100 an hour.